All right, our digital coloring sandwich is now looking a lot more Art Deco. It's gotten a lot less saturated in its intensity with all these kind of full spectrum choices. It's looking good. Bless you. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at that next option you have. So if I look at the assignment and that lemon handout, which you can also find under links if you want to download a version of this just to refer to. Now we're going to play with something called color holds. So full spectrum color, you can see that there's now purple and green in the yellow lemon, right? It's not just yellows anymore. Color holds is we're going to change the color of the black line. Because even though lemons in real life don't have an outline, right? In graphic art, they still need an outline very often, but maybe they don't need a black outline, maybe they need a green outline. And then another way to use color holds is things like little spot highlights to show that this is a really fresh, gleaming lemon. I can completely erase the line art with this highlight that sits on top. So in professional examples, we use Wonder Woman. This is duotone cut edge. Notice how her lasso is outlined in black. But with color holds, you can see how the outline of the lasso is no longer black. It's changed to an orange here. Or the color hold here to show this sun gleaming on her bracelets, right? That is overlapping the line art. And here's a really good example of the black outlines around the lasso being changed to a different color and then given a glow effect on top of the black line art. So it affects the black line art and it affects the other lines around it to make it look like it's glowing within her hand. Right? These are color holds. These go on top of or replace the black line art. Think of these as an olive with a toothpick on top of the black bread at the top of the sandwich, right? So they get stacked on top of your black layer. So here we have flat color with black outline. Here we have duotone soft edge color with black outline. Here we have full spectrum color. And now we start to have a color hold on the lasso and on the hair. You notice how the hair is just a black shape in every example until now. Now we're going to hold out some highlights on top of that black inking. So color holds can replace the outline entirely like you see here. To change it to blue. Or change it to a gradient like you see here, which I think is really effective. Just the line art. It can swap it and invert it like you see here. Or change it to a different color temperature like you see here, going more purple. Color holds here are used to affect the line art as kind of a bleed. And so let's play with color holds. So on my snake, what would have something that would affect the black line art? Well, a wing is a soft thing, right? A wing, especially kind of an angel wing, might not have a solid black outline. So how would I mess with that? Well, what I do is I select just that part of the line art that I want to replace. This does not mean that I unlock or rasterize the line art. Instead, I duplicate that selection. And in order to duplicate it, you do have to unlock it, but then I'll lock it again. So now I have the wing as a color hold. This is just the line art of the wing. And I like using layer styles so I can keep it just as clean as possible. When you duplicate it, it does rasterize, but it rasterizes to the resolution that you have set. So now I'm going to do what's called a color overlay. And instead of black, at normal mode at 100%, I'm going to use a color that works for the wing. So let me choose kind of a soft pink. Right? Something like that. And if I want to warm it up, I can. Maybe to there. Okay, now what if I want it to look like it's glowing? I can do an inner glow. And I can play with the opacity of it, the size of it. Just all these kind of settings, the jitter of it, the noise of it. And you know I like a little bit of noise. And then maybe I do an outer glow, right? That's also an aspect of color holds, just to make it feel angelic. Now I want to be careful that I don't lose the color and the definition that I've worked so hard to get. Now, the reason I do it as layer styles is I can just turn it on and off, right? But that is an example of a color hold. That's a replacement color hold. I can even do something kind of clever like this. Transform it and shrink it or offset it. So that's a color hold in some places but not in others. Just like we did with our logo designs. To do our color variations. Right? I can also Gaussian blur it. Soften it if I want to. There's just so much that I can do. Then I can even delete the outline to begin with in that area, right? And have it be kind of a ghost outline like that. So when it's on white or it's on black, it has this kind of inverted, replaced outline. That's kind of interesting. Okay, where's another place where a color hold might be helpful? Well, just like we see here, it used on her bracelets, maybe on the crown, I can do something similar, right? To make it look extra shiny. Now, color holds, this is like a second olive that's put over the top. This time I'm not replacing any existing line. If I wanted to replace all the lines, I don't even need to duplicate it or rasterize it. All I need to do is just take my black line art and then set a color overlay to it. And maybe I'll use like a dark blue. Like a navy blue, right? And see if I like that better than black. And in some ways I do. Or I can even fill it all with a gradient. Like my full spectrum gradient. Like this. So that can take over my line art, right? And the only thing that's not affected is the wing, because I have my own color hold on top of the black line art. Now I do them as layer styles because, again, they can just be turned on and off, and they can be adjusted. So I can actually have the blue, but then have that dissolve into this gradation underneath it. Or I can have it just normal and blend. And I can set it on different blending modes. There's just, as you can see, like really kind of no end to what you can do with this. So now it's affecting the line art as well. And to turn it off, I just turn off the effects and I get back to my black. But I think I like the idea of setting it to dissolve. All right, now maybe it looks a little washed out, but I can worry about that. Now I'm going to lock that again. Okay, so another way of color hold is for the crown to get a highlight on it. But this time, I'm just going to create a new layer just right on top of my black line art. Again, olives on top. And I'm just going to draw a little star with my lasso. Right? And then I'm going to fill it with white. This is on a new layer. There we go. Now that is a color hold because it's overlapping my black line art and it's on top, right? But if I want to play with it a little bit, maybe I gouge and blur it, soften it, right? Maybe I transform it so it lines up a little bit better and isn't so noticeable. Maybe I play with the layer style on it and I give it an outer glow as well, right? And that will affect beyond just the edges that I drew. I can spread that out. And I can transform it and warp it just so it really looks shiny. And maybe I hit it with a slight low opacity eraser at the edges. Right. So there we have it. This is what we call a little star highlight. Lots of ways to do it. That's without it, that's with it. Maybe I want to duplicate it and try it in a different spot as well. Now these things can all get overdone. So maybe I move it to the middle of the crown there and I shrink it using transform. Now is it still affecting the outline? It actually is. Look how the outline changes when it's turned off. So anything that goes on top of your black line art, that is a color hold. And I can move it. I can move it into the eyes. Right. I can duplicate it, move it again. Put a glint on each eye. And just where do you end, right? I can take all of those star highlights, which are now, my whole top of my sandwich is filled with toothpicks and olives, put them into a folder, and then I can play with that folder with the opacity or with the blending mode. Maybe I just want to, have them or not have them. And those are options within my file. All right, now we've gotten pretty far. We've gotten into color holds. That is this far. Now we have to think, how can we get it to show up on different backgrounds? Even though it's a spot illustration, just like our logo, we want to make sure it looks good on those different backgrounds. So on black, how is this going to look? Yeah, looks okay. But if I take my black line art, I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to add an offset, just like we did for our black logos. I'm going to add a stroke around it. The stroke is going to be on the outside, and it's going to be a lighter color than black. And I have to choose what that might be. So maybe a light blue, since I did a dark blue for the line art, right? So something like that. Now the stroke is tricky here because you see it's outlining all of my vector line art, even inside my crown. But that might be effective for yours. That's a way to add what's called an offset. Let's see, where is it? It is